Hello everyone, good evening. My name is Sharika Swaby, the Mind Reset Strategist. I am a life coach, speaker, soon to be published author, and I'm on a mission to help uplevel the consciousness of society. And with that, I started this show called Conversations with Sharika. And today's guest is the wonderful Josh Payne. He is a financial coach, speaker, mentor. He's a former athlete, inducted in the Sacramento Hall of Fame. And he too has a mission. His mission is to help American households to have a fundamental plan and clear direction to a successful financial future. So right now, Josh Payne is going to...
so that we can have a talk. Okay, Josh, I've accepted. Oh, there we go. Hi.
Hello, Sharika. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Yeah, glad to be
Awesome.
on. Yeah.
Sorry?
I'm glad to be on with you.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Definitely glad to have you here with us this evening. So let's see if I can get this up a little bit. Okay, that's better. Okay, awesome. So Josh, tell the people a little bit about you.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah?
Perfect. Okay, good. Want to make sure I got the best audio for you there, and I'm ready. Glad to be on.
All right. Yeah, super awesome. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you perfect.
Okay, awesome. All right. So tell the people a little bit about yourself, Josh.
Yeah, so like you said, man, I was an athlete growing up. Grew up in Sacramento, California. Here now in the Silicon Valley for the last 20 plus years. So it's just a couple hours away from where I grew up.
Okay.
And my entire career, my entire childhood was revolved around playing professional baseball, and went to school on a Division I college baseball scholarship. And as I was having a great career, had an injury that really prevented sort of playing at that next level.
Right.
And at that point, didn't know what I was going to do, and got a job. I did what everybody said to do: finish school, get the degree. Landed in a career, Sharika, where for 10 years I serviced the wealthiest people in the world.
Wow.
And so, and through that process, at 31 years old, after having been able to enjoy some incredible mentorship and coaching from the members I was serving, I decided I was going to unlearn everything I'd ever known about success, business, making money, and relearn it from the people that had the life that I wanted.
Wow.
And that is ultimately what led me from there into business now, where we've been for 13 years in the financial industry, publicly recognized leaders in this area, and just excited about the expansion, excited about breaking down the systemic problems in our country of lack of equal access across all economic borders to the resources and education needed for a successful future. And we're just on a mission. We're on a mission to break that down and ensure every family in our country has a fundamental plan and a clear direction to a successful financial future.
Wow, I love it. I love the mission, because I'm on a mission too. I made a goal to reach 100,000 people this year. Don't ask me how, but that's the mission. So I love the fact that you have that mission. So you said that you learned from some of the wealthiest people. What were some of the things that you learned?
Wow, I learned. I'll never forget. I had one of the mentors I was that I built a great relationship one day. He said to me, I was walking through the club, and they used to always kind of, they knew I was young and naive at the time, as far as where they were at. He says, "Hey, Payne," and I look over and he goes, "Let me ask you." He said, "How many hours do you have in the day?" And I looked at him and I went, 24, just like you. And he smiled and said, that's why you're broke. I said, what do
Wow.
you mean? He said, because you only have 24 hours in a day. He said, let's just say I had 100 employees running our business. He said, I have more than that, but each one of those 100 employees has 24 hours in a day. I now have 2,400 hours in the day.
Wow.
And he said to me this, he said, Josh, see, the biggest separator between the wealthy and the middle class, and he asked me, and I said, oh, it's the money. And he said, that's what most people say. And he said, but the biggest separator between the wealthy and the middle class is the specialized knowledge the wealthy understand about how to acquire that money. And he said, most namely, two things. Number one, he said, ownership. Wealthy people own things. And he said, number two is leverage. And he said, leveraging everything within the system. And he said this, he goes, if you look at Sam Walton, he said, Sam Walton said, you've got to do two things to become successful. You've got to serve the masses, and you've got to be able to multiply yourself to be in more than one place at the same time. And he said that is equivalent to being able to multiplying the number of hours we have in the day. He said, you trade time for money. You only have 24 hours in a day. He said, if I have 100 employees, I've now multiplied my hours times 100, and I now have 2,400 hours. If I have 2,400 hours, he said, and Josh, you only have 2,400 hours, you'll never be able to compete with me. That was a life transforming moment for me, because I understand, in my opinion, leverage, the concept of leverage is probably the most not misunderstood, but understood concept about business. And that, is a perfect example, probably one of the most transformational awarenesses I developed through the mentorship at that particular time.
Wow, that's amazing. I've never thought of that. Never. Probably would never have either.
Neither had I. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? And he goes, look, he said, how do you think we're at the country club every day playing golf and we got these businesses running? It's because we've leveraged our time by empowering others to run a system. And he said, that's the only way you can have both time and money, right? Which is freedom. The freedom comes from having both of those. He goes, there's a lot of people that have a lot of time but don't have money. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of money but don't have time. He said, freedom comes from both. And it was like,
Yeah. And then the funny thing about that is leveraging other people's time doesn't necessarily mean that the people's time that you're leveraging can't leverage other people's time either. So there's no saying that, okay, I work for somebody so I can't have something of my own. You can do the same thing.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And that's the reality of what transpired from that. This is what he told me sort of when I was kind of getting ready to transition out. He said, look, Josh, he said, you've got to find somebody who's going where you want to go. You can look in their eyes. You know they're going to get there. And they're willing to teach you what they did to get there. When you find that person, he said, you unhook that little red wagon on whatever it's hooked on, and you hook it on to them because they're going to drag you to the top with them. And that's what I was fortunate enough to find 13 years ago.
Wow. So you kind of had a immediate shift of perspective at that point, didn't you?
Overnight shift that took 10 years. Because remember, I was in the industry for 10 years. Every day I walked into my job, I watched people live the life that I wanted to live. That was the unique position I was in that was both a blessing and a curse. I saw what freedom was, but every day I had to go watch it knowing that's exactly the life I wanted to live, and I had to figure out how to create it for myself. But so there's this positive and negative from it. The positive was I knew how good it was, and I knew it was attainable, and I was aware it existed from the time I spent in that industry. The negative was I had to go watch somebody else live it every day. So that fire was burning deep inside my soul because I wanted what they had and I had to find a way to get it.
Wow. So outside of the desire that built inside of you with all of that, seeing all of that on a daily basis, how did it affect you mentally? Was it greater on the positive or on the negative side?
That's a good question. I would say I was a competitive guy, right? My entire life was about overcoming adversity, overcoming challenges, raising the bar to the next level. As an athlete, that was innately what made me successful on the baseball field. And so all I did is I looked at it and I said, okay, the awareness to say, I've got this thread of success in my fabric of life. I've been very successful here. Well, if I apply the same principles in anything else I do, then I'm going to have the same success. So there was a belief I had in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that fire that was lit simply directed to say, okay, Josh, you can do one of two things. You can play victim and just sort of, fall down in this fetal position and cry about how life is unfair, or you can get intense about finding the way you're going to make it happen for yourself. And that's what I used it as fire. I used it as fuel to say, okay, I'm going to learn everything I can from them so I can create it in my own life. Because I realized middle-class people take advice and opinions from those surrounding them, most namely families and friends, and etc.
Yeah.
But the world class seek guidance from people that have the life that they want. Mm-hmm. And so I sought guidance for 10 years, and I sort of formulated this perspective and said, okay, well, now I know what I'm going to do. I realized that they were normal people. They were normal people. They put their pants on the same way I did. They tied their shoes the same way I did. If they can do it, I can do it. I just had to find the vehicle that was going to enable me to make it happen. And that's what I did in the financial industry.
Sweet. So what was from where you were to where you are, or to starting your financial business, what was the transition like?
So I started part-time. I live here in a very expensive place to live in the world, in the Silicon Valley. So I couldn't just quit my job and start something I didn't know was going to be successful. My wife and I had established lives. She was a 13-year high school English teacher. I had been in the resort private country club industry, was very good at what I did, made a good money for a job, well into the six figures. So I couldn't just stop that, right? But what I did is I started part-time. Mm-hmm. And when I started part-time, I got licensed and I started growing my business, and it afforded me the opportunity to learn how to live on profits versus wages, right? To learn how to become an entrepreneur, to learn how to create profits versus just being paid a paycheck. And I was able to do that while keeping the security of my full-time career, okay, and my paycheck that came in every 2 weeks.
Right.
And then, there's a couple things I think I did that made it, that enabled us to transition rather quickly. I treated my part-time business like a full-time job until it paid me like a business.
Right.
So many people start a business and the business always gets the short end of the stick, right? They give everything to their employer to build somebody else's goals and dreams, and they give themselves and their business the short end of the stick all the time. That wasn't me. I gave my business the full end of the stick. I realized I was better at 70% of my capacity than most people were at 100%. And so I throttled back my giving to somebody else's goals and dreams and kept my focus on growing our business, treated it like a job until it paid us like a business, saved 100% of my part-time income, got to the point where we executed our plan. We developed the plan in our mind first, then we developed it on paper, and then we executed it. And at that point in time, I was able to fire my boss, come full-time, a couple years later, retired my wife from teaching, and here we are. We've been working together for the last 8 years.
Okay. When you finally got to that point where you could fire your boss, what was that feeling like?
You ever see the movie Pursuit of Happiness?
I have, yes.
Remember the scene where he's walking through that group of people that down the street right after he had gotten the job at that big brokerage, and he was just elated with emotion?
Right.
That's the best way I could explain it. Only because I was free from a job. And see, what it was for me is when I was injured as an athlete, I lost the dream of playing the game that I loved, but also building complete family freedom financially for my family. And I didn't know if I was ever going to find that again.
Right.
And the day I fired my boss, I realized I now had the shot to go build that in business. And it was that elation that I've still got the shot. I still have the opportunity. And man, I'm gonna get after this thing. And that's what we did.
Yeah. I'm extremely happy to hear that, because again, it proves that anything is possible and anyone can do anything they want to do, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you have your financial company now, and I was going through your PDF, your book, and you spoke about 8 steps to take control of your money. Can you walk us through those?
Yeah, I really there's 5 steps. When you look at the general picture, right? Let's make it simple. 5 steps.
Okay.
And these aren't like financial principles. These are habits and things that we have control over, right? So number 1 is to upgrade our thinking. First and foremost, right? Mindset isn't everything. It's everything plus everything. Right? Yeah. I see my buddy D. Rowan just joined here. And if you look at that shirt right there, he's wearing, I think it says mindset on it, right? Mindset is everything plus everything.
Yeah, I agree.
So the reality is we're all raised with what I call a certain money DNA, right? The way we are raised at thinking about money. And if we are raised with a way that was maybe negative programming around money, well, negative programming leads to negative attitudes and beliefs and ultimately habits about money. So if we've got to reprogram those so we can have positive attitudes, beliefs, and then habits about money, right? Because it doesn't matter whatever we do
mindset is
physically, if the mindset's not there, it's not going to work. So upgrading the mindset, number 1. And then number 2 is to establish our priorities, right? Understanding we're going to either pay now or we're going to pay later. But one way or another,
we're going to pay.
And it's going to be full price. There are no shortcuts to the top, right? And so really what that means is 2 things. Identifying the difference between wants and needs, and then understanding that short-term trade-offs today lead to long-term freedom in the future. So giving up those short-term desires today enables us to build freedom in the future, because we're going to pay now or later. And so if we can understand it's just short-term trade-offs for long-term freedom, right? Now we've got our priorities set. So if we got our mindset right, we've got our priorities right. Now it comes down to what are our goals? Clarifying our goals. Because we can't reach a destination that we haven't identified, right? The challenge, you look at Yogi Berra, right? The great Yankee catcher said, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else. Mark Twain said, I can help anybody get what they want. I just can't find anybody that knows what they want. So we got to identify the goals. Goals provide the incentive for lasting change. And they also set the benchmarks for celebration along the way, right?
Yeah.
And so they enable us to have the end result clearly defined. Napoleon Hill says you got to have a clear, concise mental picture of exactly what you want. And we set the goals, and now we've got that picture. So we've got the thinking, we've got the priorities, we've got the goals. Okay, now here's a principle. Pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. What does that mean? It means you put yourself at the head of the line. Before you pay anybody else, before you pay PG&E, before you pay the credit card companies, before you pay the car company, before you pay Wells Fargo on your home note, you pay yourself first, right? And so what does that do? It validates the goals that you've set forth for yourself from a mindset perspective. It says, I'm worthy. I'm paying myself first. And our goal is to get that to 10% of your take-home pay as fast as possible, right? And that's sort of a starting point. How fast can you get to 10%? Okay. And the biggest question I receive is, Josh, or the biggest comment is, I don't have that much money. Look, here's what happens. When you put yourself at the head of the line and you pay yourself first, then you make the adjustment the rest of the month on everything else. If you're trying to wait till the end of the month to put away whatever's left, there's never going to be anything left.
Yeah, I've proven that.
So you treat yourself as a bill, right? This is, I'm writing a check to pay my, personal whatever, right? You play a fun game with it, create a name for it, and you pay yourself first every single month. And then lastly, so again, you upgrade your thinking, you establish your priorities, you set your goals, you pay yourself first. And then the last part of it is this: seek professional guidance and create a plan. Seek professional guidance and create a plan. See, what I've learned is that it doesn't matter what I'm not talking about any specific investment, but investments work. Investors don't. Investments work, investors don't. And why is that the case? There's two emotions that kill people when they're trying to do it on their own. And that's greed and fear. Greed in times where things are good, but that's our point of biggest vulnerability. And then when times are tough, we get fearful. And we make the wrong decisions based on those two emotions. By seeking professional guidance, we now have a coach, a guide, a mentor that helps us through those periods of time and keeps us focused on the plan, the long-term plan, right? And they back us away from the edge when we're getting ready to jump, right? And that's the value of having that professional guidance, and to understand that products don't help families become financially independent. Plans and strategies do. It's a plan and a strategy. And what happens is that plan becomes the cement that holds the foundation of our financial future together.
Wow, Josh, I hope people are taking notes. So let me repeat. 1, upgrade your mindset. 2, establish priority. Number 3, clarify your goals, or pay yourself first. Was that correct?
Yep. 4
and number 5, professional guidance, seek professional guidance and create a plan. Because really, we can't get there by ourselves, right? We need to learn from somebody who has already been there, who's already done it. And that's why it's important to get a coach or a mentor or a guide or somebody. And I think for a lot of people, you mentioned something. You said that we tend to seek guidance from the people in our surroundings. And so we are seeking guidance from people who don't know better than we do. And sometimes they kind of they put our fear on us as well. So we're not only dealing with our fear, or even if we had some sense of clarity, they put their fear is popping up in our face, and we're wondering, we're caught up in what kind of decisions we're supposed to make. And oftentimes, because the guidance is wrong, we end up making the wrong decision, because you can't learn from people who don't know
Right.
what they're teaching anyway, right? So, yeah, that's that.
I had a mentor tell me this, Sharika. He said, Josh, this is what you need to understand. He said, when you accept somebody's advice, you immediately accept their quality of life.
Wow. I have to write that down.
When you accept somebody's advice, you immediately accept their quality of life. Therefore, he said, if they do not live the quality of life that you want, you must not listen to them. Because you're just going to end up right where they're at.
That's a loaded one. I love that one. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and so it goes to speak to broke Uncle Bob that asked you for $20 last week and is now trying to give you career advice the next week, right? And it just is, you know, and again, it goes back to, actually it was a conversation I had with Greg Reed, the author of 3 Feet from Gold. And he said to me, he said that he's the one that said, look, Josh, middle class people seek guidance or seek opinions or listen to the opinions and advice from their people surrounding them. He said, but the world class seek guidance from people that have what they want. And the second part to that was, and he said, and are getting the results that they desire today, so that they're relevant in today's marketplace as far as how to get those results.
Wow. I've never heard that from that. When you accept somebody's advice, you accept their quality of life. I don't think it gets any clearer than that. I mean, I don't listen to people in my environment about anything to do with growth and development. I go to YouTube or Clubhouse these days, or a coach or somebody, or a book. I read a lot of books. And the difference in perspective is major. Because it's so wide. What's that? It's the canyon. I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for here, but it's a major difference, because when you have a certain mindset, especially about money and success, it weighs heavily on what you have to say about everything. And that's why the first thing you mentioned is so important. You need to upgrade your mindset. You need to hack your money beliefs completely, because almost all the things that we were told about money is wrong, right?
Yep.
Almost all of it.
Absolutely. I've got, and over the years, as I've worked with families and growing an agency, you know, there's 3 ways that we are programmed growing up, right? We're programmed by what we see. We're programmed by what we experience, and probably the most impactful is we're programmed by what we hear. Now, we can all go back and look at the certain, you know, if we all come from a similar environment, right? Let's say we come from a middle class environment, right? We hear things like, you know, money doesn't grow on trees. What do you think I'm made of money? Turn the lights off. You're wasting energy. You're costing me money, right? All these things. Well, that's why the hearing, that's why the audio, when we hear that, that's why it's so impactful. And these develop that money DNA we all have naturally inside of us. Now, it could be a good money DNA, or for most, in my experience, for most, it's a less than fruitful money DNA. And so when we look to improve that mindset, there's really a 4-step process. number one, it takes having awareness that we've got a limiting belief. We can't fix something we don't know exists. Right?
Definitely, agreed.
So we got to have awareness. Once we have an awareness, we dismiss it, meaning it may have been what I was taught, but if it's not congruent with where I want to go, if it's not in alignment with what I want, I dismiss that belief, okay? Because it's not who I am, it's just what I was taught. And what I was taught doesn't have to be the reality we live in today. Now, once I'm aware and I dismiss it, then I must replace it
something else
with a thought that it is congruent, that is in alignment with what I want. And then the most important part to it is number 4. And that is to reinforce. And this is where the work comes in that most people miss, which is why they fall back into the original ways they were thinking, right? And that reinforcement comes from repetition and affirmation, right? And the repetition and affirmation comes from, the best way I teach it is by writing your goals and affirmations every morning and every night. Every morning and every night. And that is the repetition and affirmation that supports that reprogramming of the mind to dismiss the limiting beliefs, replace it with beliefs that are congruent with where I want to go, right? Upgrading that thinking that enable us to put the habits in place to get the results that we want.
Right. And that's very important, because unless we do that, you start today and you stop tomorrow.
Right.
You're never going to make any progress. So what is one of the most common mistakes that you've seen people make when planning for their financial future?
Not planning.
Not planning. Okay.
Not planning, not having a plan. And that ultimately is the majority of the challenges. And here, let me tell you what I believe the biggest mistake is financially, is that the middle class wastes their money on income consumers, things that take money out of their checking account. The cars, the clothes, the shoes, all of the material things that look and feel good, but do nothing for our future financially. The wealthy, not only do they not waste money on income consumers, they invest their money in income producers. And income producers do what? Put money back into your possession, right? And this is through the investment process, right? Whatever that investment, it could be any number of things, but it's
from
just
real
where
estate to stock and all of that stuff.
Yeah, everything, right? So it's just what are our habits with our money? Are we taking our money and wasting it on things that take money out of our checking account but never put anything back in? Or are we taking our money and putting it into things that add money back into our possession in one way or another? That's the biggest difference, right? And so the wealthy live below their means, take the extra money, put it into things that produce more money. And then they take that added money and they purchase more things that produce more money, and most namely assets, right, in some form or another, that add more money. So it's just a matter of what are our habits? Where does that come from? Our mind.
Yeah. So you said something a while ago. So people waste money on things that are taking money out of their pockets but not putting anything in. And you mentioned shoes and clothes and stuff. So I understand completely what you mean, but for clarity, for some people who might be thinking something different, say someone is thinking, okay, do I not buy these shoes when I need it for work, and wear something that doesn't look good, that doesn't make me feel good, so that I can invest it? How would you advise someone who's thinking something down that line?
I think there's reason on everything, right? Everything's within reason.
Right.
But at the end of the day, try not to get so too direct here, right? But at the end of the day, right, I live my life based on principles. not
Okay.
feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Business doesn't care how I feel. My investments accounts don't care how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
What do they care about? The principles. Are you putting money in or you're not putting money in? Am I growing a business or am I not growing a business? It doesn't care how I feel. Okay, now that being said, look, it's a matter of it's a matter of prioritizing. It's a matter of being smart with your money. It's a matter there are creative ways to do things, right? So at the end of the day, look, it's trade-offs, right? It's pay now or pay later, but one way or another we're going to pay. So how can I get what I need? Two ways to look at this. How can I get what I need in the most responsible way?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of it is, look, if we're really getting down to this nitty gritty, then look, man, let's increase income. Let's find ways to increase income so that we can have more flexibility in what we do. It does, and that can get us to where we want to go faster,
Right.
but also can enable us to do things that maybe we weren't able to do on our fixed income situation, right? So there's a couple of ways to look at it. At the end of the day, the important perspective is to understand that at the end of the day, we either are or we aren't financially independent, regardless of how we feel along the way. And so helping find a reasonable path, right? A reasonable, say, happy medium, but still
Mm-hmm.
making sure we have the habits in place for success
Right.
down the road.
So, Josh, we're almost at the end, and this has been a wonderful conversation. I wish we could go on for a couple of hours. But
Do it again.
what are some of the principles that you live by as a professional, as a coach, as a guide for other people? What are some of the principles that you live by in terms of mindset and finance and family life and all of that?
Yeah. Get up, dress up, and show up every day, no matter how you feel. At the end of the day,
dress up, show up.
Exactly. Get up, dress up, show up. I'm an example for my kids. I'm an example in business. I'm an example in life. I'm either going to be a great example or I'm going to be a terrible warning.
Yeah.
And I choose in my life to be a great example. And I'm human, right? Doesn't mean I'm trust me, just ask my wife. She'll tell you how far from perfect I am, right? Or just ask our agents in our agency. But you know what? My heart's in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get up and I'm going to give it everything I got every single day.
Right.
I'm going to learn along the way. I'm going to raise the bar daily. I'm going to get better daily. And my favorite quote, and I think that this will tie into the question, but it will also give some food for thought going away from this, is from somebody I look up to. I think he's my favorite author, but more importantly, he's my favorite. He's a great example. His name is Tim Grover, and he wrote the book Relentless, and just came out with his new book Winner.
Okay.
And in the book Relentless, he says, when you crave the end result so intensely, the work it takes to get there becomes irrelevant.
You just do what you have to.
You do what you have to do because why? Because the end result. And here's the challenge I see for people, and this is the challenge in our educational system. Our educational system, again, the programming, asks this question in the wrong order. See, we teach our kids to think about what they want to be when they get older. What do you want to be when you get older? What do you want to be when you get older? What do you want to be when you get older? I was recently, actually, I think it was about a year ago, I was working with my son. He's now in second grade. He was in first grade at the time. They were doing a project like what do you want to be when you get older? And he was, whatever it was, writing down and matching, objects with words and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped him in the middle of it. And I said, Mijo, let me ask you a question. What do you want? What are your goals when you grow up? What do you want to do when you get it? What do you want to have? What do you want to become?
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that. And I said, okay, now are these things you're listing out here, are those going to enable you to accomplish those goals? And he looked at me and he said, I don't think so, Daddy. I said, okay. And I said, so if this is what we want, now we've asked the right question first. What do you want?
Yeah.
And when we know what we want, now we must seek a vehicle and a lifestyle that is going to get us to the end result.
Yeah.
And so too many times people tell me, Josh, I want to do something with passion. I want to do something I'm passionate about. Wait a second. What do you want? Let's figure out the end result that you desire in your life, and then let's go find a vehicle that will enable you to accomplish that. Because I promise you, if you're working on purpose to that end result and you crave that end result so intensely, the work it takes to get there becomes irrelevant. That's how I try and live my life every day.
Awesome. This is for a different conversation, but that way of asking questions to kids in school is a way to ensure that they have people for the workforce, but that's another story, right?
It's just the question's out of order. The question must be first, what do you want?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's identify a career or a path that's going to get you what you want. Not identify what I want to do. I want to be a teacher. Okay, well that's great, but I want to change the world. I want to end hunger and across the world. Well, the path may not provide the end result. So why are we've got to adjust how people are approaching that question in the right order so we can identify then the vehicle that will get them there.
Yeah.
And,
that's brilliant. What is the end result? Not how you're going to make dinner, none of that stuff. What's the end result? That's a great way of putting it. So I have two more questions before we wrap up. Okay, so the next one is share with us a couple of your affirmations that you use to maintain the mindset that is required to achieve at the level that you're achieving.
Sure. I am a champion. I am a leader. Money flows to me easily and frequently. I attract wealth and abundance. I'm a dreamer. I'm a crusader. All things are possible through the power of the subconscious mind. And I'm a great storyteller. Those are my affirmations I write down every day and say every day.
Awesome. And you are a great storyteller. So I guess that one works.
Which is a learned, it's not natural for me. That's why I affirm it, right? I had to reprogram my mindset on it and affirm it every day.
Awesome. Okay. Finally, I want to ask you, what is, if you were to give the people who come across this video any kind of advice in terms of getting from a rut to a place of financial independence and freedom, what is something that you would say to them?
Simple. Find somebody, I've said it 2 or 3 times already, find somebody who has what you want or is going where you want to go. You know they're going to get there. You look in their eyes, you know they're going to get there, and they're willing to teach you what to do. When you find that person, you unhook that little red wagon on whatever rut it's currently in, and you hook it onto them, and they'll drag you to the top with them. We've got to seek counsel from people. This is what shaped my entire life. At 31 years old, I said, flush the toilet on everything that I've learned up to this point. And learn it now from people that have what I want. This is why I'm so passionate about that, because I seek guidance from people that have what I want, and if they do not listen, they do not have the quality of life that I want, I do not listen to them, because if I do, I immediately accept their quality of life. And so therefore, I'm not going to listen to them. I'm listening to people that have what I want.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a wonderful conversation and a real pleasure to have you. Do you want to tell people how to find you if they would like to reach
Yes,
you?
at Josh B. Payne, at Josh B. Payne here on Instagram. Give me a follow. I promise you that the content will be, if you liked what you heard, the content will be in direct or in absolute congruent alignment with what you've heard today. And then you can find me at joshpayne.club. joshpayne.club, C-L-U-B.
Awesome, awesome. So again, thank you, Josh. Wonderful conversation, and I definitely want to have you back on here for another conversation around mindset, because I like the way you think and all of that stuff. So I guess we'll be talking another time. But thank you once more for joining me. It was a real pleasure.
It was my honor and pleasure.
Okay. All right, people, you here. Level up your mindset and let's get this party started. Financial freedom, we say.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Josh.
All
Bye.
right. God bless. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.